Rachel barely gave it a second thought when she spotted her cat, Bella, lounging in the sink that morning. As far as she knew, Bella had never been there before, and now the cat was refusing to budge no matter what Rachel did. But when Rachel finally discovered the reason behind Bella's strange behavior, her heart skipped a beat. She needed help, and fast. The police arrived at Rachel's house as quickly as they could. She had locked Bella in another room and stood anxiously by the sink, her heart pounding as she waited for the officers to arrive. All she could do now was hope she'd been wrong. But the officers' faces quickly shattered that hope. It only took them a moment to recognize something was terribly off. They urgently needed to get into the sewers beneath Rachel's house. There was no time to waste. Rachel felt a wave of horror wash over her. If only she'd acted sooner. Back when Bella first became fixated on the sink, maybe things could have been different. But why had her cat been so obsessed with the sink in the first place? What had made Rachel call the police? And most importantly, what were the officers about to uncover down in the sewers? Normally, as soon as Rachel opened the bedroom door, Bella would race over, excited for food and attention. Being an indoor cat, Bella depended on Rachel for all her company. But today, Bella was nowhere to be found, and Rachel began to worry. Even though she had carefully cat-proofed the house, Bella always found ways to get into tight spots. What if something had happened overnight, and Bella was stuck somewhere? Rachel began calling out for Bella throughout the house, shaking a package of her favorite treats, which usually guaranteed Bella would come running. But not this time. The longer she searched, the more anxious she became. Could Bella have somehow escaped? She always made sure the doors were locked before bed. But when she noticed the open bathroom door, she was struck by a devastating realization. She had left the bathroom window slightly open the night before to let steam escape after her shower. She had intended to close the door afterward, but had clearly forgotten. Rachel rushed to the bathroom with tears in her eyes, fearing she might never see her cat again. The window was indeed still open, but to her immense relief, she found Bella in the bathroom, lying in the sink. The cat didn't even look up when Rachel entered the room, despite her nearly shouting Bella's name and shaking the treats. Instead, Bella seemed entirely fixated on sniffing and scratching the sink drain as if her life depended on it. Rachel was so overcome with relief that she had found her cat that it didn't occur to her something might be wrong with the sink. She picked Bella up, hugging her tightly, and closed the bathroom door behind her. Bella initially resisted but soon settled into the attention. When Rachel poured the treats into Bella's bowl, the cat ate eagerly. But immediately after finishing, Bella returned to the bathroom door, scratching and mewing, desperate to get back inside. Rachel wasn't planning on letting her in just yet. If Bella got back into the sink, she might turn on the water, which would run all day while Rachel was at work. She was already running late after her search for Bella, so she had to rush. As she walked to her car, she noticed a strange foul smell but didn't have time to investigate. She assumed it was an issue with the sewers and didn't give it much thought. Little did she know that the smell and Bella's behavior were closely connected. Bella knew something Rachel didn't. Rachel's workday was uneventful, and her mind drifted back to the morning. With her emotions now calmer, she began to wonder about Bella's strange behavior. The fact that even treats couldn't lure her away from the sink was unusual, and the way she begged to be let back in the bathroom only confirmed that something was amiss. She couldn't shake the thought of the sink. At the end of her shift, Rachel rushed home to find Bella lying outside the closed bathroom door, having fallen asleep waiting. With the window now shut, Rachel cautiously opened the bathroom door, and Bella darted straight into the sink, sniffing around the drain. But something had changed in the bathroom during the day. The smell from the street was faint but unmistakable. It lingered in the air, coming from the sink. Rachel couldn't identify the smell, but she sensed something was very wrong. Unable to verify it herself, she called the police, hoping they would check it out. At first, they were skeptical. Strange smells from the sewers were common, and most issues resolved themselves. But Rachel was adamant that something was going on, urging them to come and investigate. Bella hadn't been acting this way for no reason, and Rachel trusted her cat's instincts. Before long, she convinced the officer to send someone out to investigate, a decision they wouldn't regret. About 20 minutes later, an officer arrived. He knocked on Rachel's door, and when she opened it, she saw a young officer, checking his phone and asking for coffee, seemingly uninterested in investigating the sewer. Little did he know what lay ahead. The officer intended to suggest a specialist check the sewer, hoping to wrap up the visit quickly. But as he was about to leave, Rachel persuaded him to look at Bella first. He agreed, and as he entered the bathroom, he immediately noticed the strange smell and Bella's obsessive behavior around the sink. When he tried to move her, Bella became aggressive, heightening the officer's concern. The combination of the odor, Rachel's alarm, and the cat's unusual behavior convinced him to call for backup. During his call, the officer learned that many officers were occupied with similar issues in other homes. Something was clearly going on. Rachel was anxious. Was this really the help she needed? The officer asked her to remove Bella so he could examine the sink. Rachel picked Bella up, calming her, while the officer prepared to inspect the sink. She decided to leave the bathroom to keep Bella occupied. A few minutes passed, And then the officer suddenly rushed out of the bathroom, shut the door, and demanded the key. Rachel, overwhelmed, wondered what he had found in the sink. There was no time for questions as he locked the door and told her to come with him. Although he didn't place her in handcuffs, his urgency was alarming. What was happening in her home? As they were about to leave, Rachel noticed the same stranger from earlier that day approaching the building. She didn't recognize him as a neighbor, but couldn't shake the familiarity of his face. At the station, Rachel was settled into a comfortable room, offered coffee, cake, and even the option to call a friend or family member for support. It was clear she wasn't a suspect, but there was every reason to believe something serious was unfolding. The room had a large window, and as she tried to calm herself with tea, she noticed more officers gathering outside, surrounding the young officer who had a lot to explain. A friendly officer entered Rachel's room, glanced at Bella with a concerned look, and without looking directly at Rachel said, "Ma'am, please tell me everything that happened today from the beginning." Rachel repeated her story, though it seemed the officer was looking for something specific. Just as the officer was about to leave, Rachel recalled the stranger she had seen twice that day. "Wait," she called out, quickly describing the man. The officer took notes, thanked her, and then unexpectedly closed the blinds and locked the door, leaving Rachel feeling like a prisoner rather than a concerned resident. What connection did the stranger have, and why was she being kept in the dark? Rachel decided to call her lawyer, who was shocked to hear her story. "Stay in the room and wait for me," he instructed. As she hung up, she heard commotion from the officers outside. 10 minutes later, her lawyer arrived, and as he entered the room, Rachel overheard the police discussing plans to return to her home. She was desperate for answers, but the door was quickly closed. Rachel's lawyer tried to reassure her, suggesting it might be a misunderstanding, but then he noticed Bella. Rachel hadn't mentioned the cat before, and the lawyer suddenly grew concerned. Bella reminded him of a previous case that hadn't ended well. He couldn't share details, but he insisted on ensuring Bella's safety. He left the room, and after a few minutes, returned looking unsettled. The lawyer explained that, while Rachel was at the station, the police had made an arrest. Rachel and her lawyer were soon escorted to the office of the lead officer. Sitting tensely, Rachel learned that the stranger had been apprehended. Relieved but still full of questions, she pressed for details. What was the strange smell, and what role had the stranger played? The officer replied calmly, "You'll understand once you see it yourself. Are you sure you want to know?" Rachel, though shaken, nodded firmly. In a police car escorted by the lead officer, Rachel returned to her building, now barely recognizable with police and specialized cleaning units surrounding it. Guided down into the sewer below, the officer began to explain the chilling reality. A genetically engineered virus had been released into the sewers, killing off a vast number of rats. The foul stench that had drawn Bella to the sink was the result of these deaths. The mysterious figure Rachel had glimpsed was a scientist, the very person who had created the virus. His intention had been to control the rat population, but he had gravely underestimated the effects. The police had been on his trail even before Rachel's report. That evening, Rachel and Bella were finally allowed to return home. From that day on, they've managed to live in peace, leaving the haunting events behind them.